All right, so we are going to be working on simplifying radicals. This is what a question could look like. I would like you to simplify the radical 121. Now you should start noticing that this is a number that looks familiar because it is a perfect square. And our perfect squares, I think I said this in the last video, my suggestion is to write this down every single time you have it in your head. Let's go through how to write it. What's 1 times 1? 2 times 2, 3 times 3, 4 times 4, 5 times 5, 6 times 6, 7 times 7, 8 times 8, 9 times 9, 10 times 10, etc. Now what we're missing is 11 times 11, which is 121. So the square root of 121 is a perfect square. That makes our life really easy because the square root of 121 is 11. And these are things that you need to have memorized. A problem like that is something we're expecting you to know at this point. Now the new stuff, things that we're looking at today, tomorrow, and the following week are things that look like this. Because you will notice that 8 is not a perfect square. So the square root of 8 is not 11 or 2 or 9. I know that it's here. I know that it's in there. I know it's between 2 and 9 because the square root of 4 is 2 and the square root of 9 is 3. So it's like 2.8 something. And when I type it in my calculator, just like if I typed in 121, it gave me a nice number. It was 11. Oh, I don't know if you saw that. It was 11. Whereas if I type in the square root of 8, yeah, like 2.8 to, I don't know. And we don't love decimals. Decimals have their purpose, but the reason we're not doing decimals is because if I said, okay, what's the square root of 8? I could say it's 2.8, and you could argue with me and say, no, actually it's 2.8284. And then a friend could be like, actually it's 2.828427. I sound like Oscar from The Office, if you guys watch that, actually. And so we want to make sure we're not actually using the decimal. We want to simplify the radical, just like a fraction. If I said, okay, I want you to simplify, I'm going to use an example over here. If I said I want you to simplify 4 over 14, I'd be like, okay, well, that's a number. And when we type in 4 divided by 14, we get this like long decimal, but I want to simplify it. How do I get 4 over 14 simplified? Oh, 2 goes into both. And your actual answer is 2/7. And so we're going to do something similar over here. That was just an example. You don't have to write that down. But the square root of 8, we are looking for a perfect square that multiplies into 8. So does 1 go into 8? Yes, 1 times 8 gives me 8. Does 4 go into 8? Yes, 4 and 2, right? Multiply to be 8. 9 doesn't. And so you always want to pick the bigger one. Don't pick 1, it's useless. Pick the bigger one, and 4 goes into 8. So I'm going to have you write it out like this. What two numbers multiply to be 8, but one of them has to be a perfect square? And your answer in this case would be 4 and 2. These two things are correct, but why is that not simplified? Because the square root of 4 is 2. We did a problem like that, or you could have easily done a problem like that. I don't think we actually did it. But the square root of 4 is technically 2 roots of 2. And we want a perfect square. We want to pick a perfect square because I want the least amount of perfect squares. I want them to turn into nice numbers. So if you were able to follow along, I know I talked a lot. If you were able to follow along, you're good to go and ready to practice with us. And my hope is that you can do that on your own right now. So let's practice. Simplify the square root of 18. Okay? What perfect square goes into 18? Does 1 go into 18? Yeah, technically 1 times 18. Does 4 go into 18? Nope, it doesn't. But if you are someone who these multiplication problems are getting a little hard, you can use a calculator to practice and say, oh, well, that doesn't go in a whole time. But 9 does. 18 is divisible by 9. And so I'm going to write it out as 9 times what? 9 times 2. And I'm trying to use some colors here to emphasize that you want to pick a perfect square, because when I pick a perfect square, what is the square root of 9? And hopefully you're at home going, oh, it's 3. You're right, it's 3 roots of 2. And those, you're starting to see some simplified answers. You could plug them both into your calculator and see that they're equal, that they're both the same. Let's try another example. Square root of 200. What is that going to simplify to be? Well, let's look at all of our numbers. Does 1 go into 200? Yeah, it does. Does 4 go into 200? Yes, it does. It goes in 50 times. Does 9 go into 200? I don't think so. I actually know it doesn't, but I'm just practicing. No, it doesn't. And you can use your calculator to do some of those pieces. Sorry, I was painting today. If I take 200 and divide it by 16, it doesn't work, but I'll show you why. 16. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't go in a whole number. So you go 25 does go in. So far 1 goes in, 4 goes in, 25 goes in. Does 36 go in? No. Does 49 go in? No. Does 64 go in? No. Does 81 go in? No. Does 100 go in? Yes, it does. And again, you could plug those all into your calculator if you needed to have that done for you. Now we want to pick the biggest one. So don't pick those. We want the biggest number. And so I'm going to pick 100 and what? Don't put 100 there. It's what numbers multiply to be 200. So you actually want a 2 there. Don't put 100 there. Some people might accidentally do that. And the square root of 100 is 10. Square root of 2. Notice how these things don't change. So you're going to have some practice problems where you are doing this on your own today.